It's time for the one and only, the premier, the only official podcast of Pro Rodeo. Your Chute Bosses are ready, so let's give it a go and talk some rodeo.
Welcome back into the Chute Bosses. It is our first episode of season number 2, Tracy. It's hard to believe that we already worked our way through 21 episodes in season 1 towards the back half of that 2023 Pro Rodeo season all the way up to the NFR and kind of a recap after that. But we're already on to season number 2 here, man, as the 2024 season heats up.
Yeah, this is all part of this dream I had years ago to hopefully we could ever do this. And now that we were able to do it, and obviously the talent that you had, and we had other people involved to pushing this, and it's been fantastic.
Can't wait to see what the 2024 Pro Rodeo season has in store. It'll be a lot of great headlines and highlights for us to watch, storylines. We've got a lot of those we're going to get into here on this episode. Also, Tracy, towards the back end of the show, we're going to sit down and talk with the 2023 Announcer of the Year, Anthony Lucia, and I just can't wait because he's a big personality, and he's really starting to become a great rodeo announcer, and the fans, the contestants, they realized that this past year.
Yeah, I mean, he gets that award, and I know he was emotional when he got that award at South Point because of his father and being a Pro Rodeo Hall of Famer, especially act. And Anthony, the interesting thing I want to see is just his backstory. I mean, everybody knows the things he's done, but I would be interested to see what we can talk to him about how he got to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get there, we're going to jump a little bit into the bones of the show. And as we always do, Tracy, we're going to start things off with Pro Rodeo props. And this one is a no-brainer. The passing of Calgary Stampede standout horse, Grated Coconut. One of, if not the best, horse of all time in Pro Rodeo on the rough stock side of things, passed away. And that's just a horse that everybody knows in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, that horse was like a 90 every time it was out. I mean, if you drew that horse and you did your job, you were going to win a check and you're probably going to win the rodeo. And I mean, and Calgary Stampede's had their share of great horses, but he's probably at the top of the list.
Yeah, he ties descent for those 6 PRCA world titles, also 6 Canadian world titles, went to 8 NFRs. Like, the horse literally did it all. We're not just talking about, a once in every 2 or 3 years NFR horse. Maybe he won NFR Horse of the Year. This is the gold standard in rodeo. I
mean, to win 12 horses of the year between PRCA and Canadian, I mean, it's one thing to stay strong for a few years, but to be the best of the best for 6 years as a horse and the health and everything, anything can go wrong. They're unpredictable at times, but that horse was just incredible, and it was so stout. Like it almost looks weird when you see pictures because he was so strong.
Yeah,
just a big horse. I mean, and he could buck. Man, he could buck.
Yeah, that picture we have on the front of that Pro Rodeo Sports News, you can just see how special genetically that horse was. But we mentioned headlines and storylines as we get into the month of February here, Tracy, and we're going to go back to some really important ones that have happened. Speaking of horses, Star Rafter G horse Assault has his last out at the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo, so that's something where that horse had a great career as well. I think 14 trips to the NFR, 10 as a bareback horse, 4 as a saddle bronc. The longevity was there, and I think Jim Gay said he never missed a single out, did he? No injuries.
No injuries, and
that's
crazy. Incredible. Yeah. I mean, that horse was strong, and what you want is a consistent, solid horse. I mean, if you can go to the NFR five or 6 times as a horse, that's pretty remarkable. But to go 14 and do it in 2 different events, I mean, most horses don't do 2 events great. I mean, they might do one in saddle bronc really well, and they could do bareback, but usually they're hard to do both very well, and that horse did both very well. And I mean, Jim Gay had said that's probably the best horse they've had, and that speaks highly of how great that horse is, knowing how that stock country company's been around for decades.
Yeah, let's dive into another one of our headlines. Reigning PRCA World Champion bull rider Kai Hamilton going to be forced to miss quite a bit of the 2024 season, Tracy. We wrote indefinitely online, and that indefinite means he's out for the foreseeable future. We're talking a 6 to 8 month recovery, probably there for a torn labrum in his shoulder, and just unfortunate to see for Kai. He battled through injuries to win his world title in Las Vegas, and then he comes out and has another one that originally occurred in Denver, back in early January.
Yeah, and it looked like he just pulled his shoulder out.
And it just kept coming out.
Right, and it comes to a point where, those Cowboys, there's no question that you can't question their toughness, but there comes a point you just can't ride anymore without, causing lifelong harm. And it's unfortunate. I mean, the crazy thing is we start the 24 season, there's no Stetson riding the all-around for the time being.
Or bull riding.
And Kai Hamilton's out. I mean, it opens the door to a lot of young up-and-comers or guys that have said, hey, I want to be the bull riding champ. I mean, obviously, Josh Frost has knocked on the door the last several years. And all around's wide open this year. I mean, and who knows? I mean, I don't foresee Stetson. I mean, possibly. It just depends how fast guys come back from injury. But the door is wide open and the money's there for someone to make a run at it this year in both those events.
Yeah, and Kai mentioned to us that he's expected to have surgery towards the back half of February, then probably a 6-month recovery. So he could maybe be in that July to August window, and he still has all the confidence in the world that he can go out and make the NFR.
And it's possible.
It's hard to doubt a guy in bull riding.
Yeah, Stetson Wright won what?
$120,000 just in bull riding in the month of September last year.
Right, so 1 month. I mean, that was kind of heroic and unheard of. But Kai's got that same type of ability.
He does.
A lot of it depends on draws, and a lot of things have to go your way. Could he make the NFR? Yeah, if you get on a heater like that. I mean, you're going to be pressed for time. You're going to have to be traveling across the country to make as many rodeos as possible. But I don't doubt bull riders, only because if you can get to Calgary or you can get to a rodeo in July, the days of 47, the pay's huge. And with the ground money counting in bull riding, there's the possibility. The other events, when ground money doesn't count, it's a lot harder when the big money rodeos stop paying out towards, in different parts of the season. I would love to see Kai make that, and that would be an incredible story. I would love to see Stetson make it in maybe one of his events. It's just going to make things a lot different this year, because every year for the last several years, Stetson Wright's going to win the all-around. I mean, it's like Trevor Brazil for 14 years practically. So, but change is good. I mean, now we get these other guys a chance that you can make that crowning achievement, maybe change your career.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about it. And sadly, we have some more injury news to talk about. But this one has a little bit of a different outcome, Tracy. I was down in Fort Worth covering the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo. Had a chance to sit down and talk with Shad Mayfield after he won the title in the tight end roping. And he comes out and tells me, he mentioned it in the arena to Katie Lucas, but he came out and told me that, after the NFR, he'd been dealing with a lot of hip tightness, a lot of pain in his hips. And so he went and sat down with the Justin Sports Medicine team and Dr. Tandy Freeman. And they actually told him he has 2 labrums in both hips, both his left and his right hip. And they encouraged him, hey, you probably need to go in there and have these fixed, because, it's something that can ultimately lead to having hip replacements. And the guy's 23 years old. He wins Fort Worth, though, and says, I'm on a roll. I don't think I want to waste this start to the year. He's already, closing in on $70,000. But, an interesting topic right now amongst a lot of fans in rodeo.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Kai and different guys. How much can you deal with the pain without causing lifelong, long-term injuries to yourself?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, that'd be the biggest question he'd have to answer to himself. And it's really hard when you have like $70,000 won by like February 3rd, and you only need about 40 more thousand, and you're going to get to the NFR, maybe less.
Exactly.
And so he sees that window, and he sees these big rodeos, and I could see him fighting through that fight. And I know it bothered him last year. He'd never probably admit it, and maybe he did in some sense, that Riley Webb broke his record that he had for 1 year.
He has that quote. You saw my quote in the story. He said, Riley broke my record. I want it back.
Yeah, and those guys take a lot of pride. I mean, he won $203,000, and you thought, there's no way someone's going to catch him. Yeah. And then Riley Webb does it the next year. And that's a testament to what rodeos pay nowadays. But I could see him with the toughness he has. The thing that's crazy to me is you wouldn't realize that he was injured because he's so athletic. I mean, he
won with the 7.8 and had a 7.5 in the semis.
Yeah, he's like 6'2", probably 180, 200. Yeah, 200. He looks like a cornerback in football. He's built that way. And we think to have hip problems like that, how many runs do you have to make from the time you're probably like 10 years old to 23 to start having those problems? And that's the drawback of the dedication you have to put in to be great, is you have to do a lot of runs. You have to do a lot of things, and sometimes it's like tennis elbow, or it's certain things that reoccur because you put in so much time and effort. But he's got a gold buckle in 20, and I know he wants to add more than that. He's too talented not to get more gold buckles.
Yeah, and that's something that Chad even mentioned. He said there was probably days when he was about 12 to 13 years old, all the way for maybe up until recently, where he was running 20 to 30 calves a day on 8 different horses. That just shows that you're getting off your horse on a full sprint every single time. That's having a lot of impact. And he said, this injury's kind of made him realize that he maybe needs to take care of his body a little bit more. He has to sit back and remember, we are professional athletes. Guys like Tom Brady, LeBron James, that longevity, it's because they took care of themselves and they were in great shape. So I'll be interesting to see what Shad decides. It sounds like he's going to go full bore here in 2024 and kind of see how it shakes out. But going to probably have to address that injury before too long.
Well, it's like Stetson Wright. At some point he said, okay, I've won these gold buckles. I'm going to have to miss till July or whatever it is in 24. I mean, at some point you have to say, what's best for me, Stetson, right?
At 23 years old.
At 23 years old, to stay healthy, to win more gold buckles down the road. And that's why Stetson's out. I mean, Stetson probably, maybe on some level, come back in 2 or 3 months. And,
he could have rehabbed it.
Right, and fight the fight. But you want to come back fully healthy. I mean, there's no guarantees with injuries in rodeo, especially in bull riding and different events. But you want to give yourself the best opportunity. You don't. How many times do we see in all these sports? Oh, I came back too early.
Yeah.
I came back too early. And as soon as you come back, oh my gosh, I pulled my hamstring.
Yeah.
I tweaked my knee, and because you want.
Is that a direct shot at me or what?
Because that's all those guys know, though. That's their life.
That's true.
So it's hard to sit. There's your livelihood, and sit back and watch. So. But hopefully Shad, he'll make the right decision. I mean, his dad's a former NFR guy. Like,
he's got a lot of really good people in his corner.
And he knows what to do. But it's sad when you see guys have to deal with that at such a young age.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we'll be keeping an eye on those injuries as the pro rodeo season progresses here on the Chute Bosses. It's time for our 8-question segment. This one's going to be a good one. We sat down with the 2002 PRCA World Champion steer wrestler Sid Steiner, the father of none other than Rocker Steiner, and just a good dude, Tracy, infectious personality, and was really one of those guys in the early 2000s that just let it all hang out, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's his own personality. I mean, he was Larry Mahan on steroids. I mean, he's Sid Rock. That's what he called him. They did a big feature story on Sid Rock, and he played the part. But I don't have a problem with guys playing the part when you're winning world championships. And he retired super young. Like,
he did, yeah.
He retired. He won the world. He's wearing pleather. He was quoted in the story I did on him several years ago, a recap of the Sid Rock story, that he was wearing pleather jeans, like Wrangler pleather jeans. I
like it.
Black. I mean, that's unheard of at the NFR. But he won the world and basically just walked away. I mean, how many guys can do that when he was still in his 20s?
Yeah.
And he's such a great personality, and I mean, I enjoy being around him. But he's cool. He's cool to us. We enjoy the time we have with him, and it's great that you were able to stop and talk to him at Fort Worth.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's join Sid Steiner for our 8-question segment.
It's time for 8 questions with world champion Sid Steiner. Sid, most memorable moment of your pro rodeo career?
Probably watching my kids. You know, I mean, unless you're just talking about my career, but as far as pro rodeo goes, I enjoy watching my kids more than anything.
What's the most memorable moment that you've seen Rocker do in his career?
Well, you know, the deal at Darby, Montana, the 95 really was pretty incredible. I mean, I felt like when I was watching it go down, I really kind of felt like it was a dream, and I really didn't know what I was watching, and so that to me was, you know, pretty memorable. Watching him, I didn't get to go to Calgary with him that year, but watching Calgary on TV win the 50, pretty big deal. You know, he's really had so many big moments for a young guy. It's been pretty incredible. And then I got to watch my daughter win Tucson a few years back, which was pretty neat too. So yeah, just seeing your kids compete and be successful at the things they love to do and work at is a really neat dad moment.
Have you ever had the urge to come back and compete?
No, because Rocker would win so much more than I was going to win, and Steely too. I don't want to be the third place guy in the family. So no, my day is over.
Yeah, for you, Sid, I guess, you know, at this point in your life, you know, looking back on what you've done in the sport of rodeo, what makes the sport so special?
You know, I think it's like anything else. You get out what you put in, and I think anytime your hard work pays off, and you know, there's going to be ups and downs in the rodeo business, and hurting hurts more than winning feels good. And so, you know, when you win at these big shows, and you know that you'd worked hard for that, I really think that's one of the neat things about the rodeo business is you can roll up your sleeves and get to work, and you can really make it happen.
And these next questions are just going to be, we're going to go fire around here, Sid.
Uh-oh.
Rough stock or timed event?
Rough stock.
Apples or oranges?
Apples.
Flowers or candy?
Flowers.
If you had a chance to go back and do anything in your life, what would it be?
Anything. I wouldn't change a thing about my life. I mean, I seriously feel like I'm living in a dream every day, and I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
Well, Sid, we appreciate you sitting down with us for 8 questions.
Man, thank you for having me.
Always great to sit down and talk with Sid, Tracy, and you can just see how much love he has, you know, for his rodeo career, but also just his kids. You know, seeing Steely and seeing Rocker have the success they've had. He mentions that that's more important to him than some of the things he did in his career.
Well, I can attest.
As a father, yeah.
Watching my own daughter and son play sports when they succeeded, I mean, you have this euphoria of emotion that's nothing like. I mean, I was athletics at a lower level too, and there's nothing like seeing your kid or son or daughter succeed, especially at the highest level of the PRCA. So I agree with him there at 100%.
Yeah, we appreciate Sid sitting down and chatting with us. We'll have more great interviews and questions coming your way with our 8 questions segment. But we're going to take a quick break here on the Chute Bosses. When we come back, we'll have our Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame spotlight and so much more coming your way. We're back after this.
Cowboying is in our blood. Cowboying is in our bruises. It's in our rain-soaked jackets. In our calloused hands, tested by barbed wire and rope. Our mud-stained boots to the crown of our resist-all hat. You live out west for even the shortest time, and there's one thing you learn. You can't pretend out here. Resist all. We live it every day.
Welcome back into the Chute Bosses podcast. We mentioned we'll be sitting down and talking with Anthony Lucia. That'll be coming up in segment number 3 here of the show, the official podcast of Pro Rodeo. Tracy, it's time for our Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame spotlight, and this man, what he's done inside the arena speaks for itself. We're talking 1993 Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame inductee Bruce Ford, 5-time world champion bareback rider, 18 trips to the National Finals Rodeo, which that's almost unheard of in bareback riding because it is so physically demanding.
Yeah, he's one of the best, if not, probably top 5 ever.
Right there with Casey,
Yeah, he's from, that's the record Casey Field broke at 6 world titles, but to beat 18 NFRs in bareback riding, like you said, that's crazy.
My neck hurts just thinking about it.
Just based on the injuries. I mean, guys that go on it, even Casey only went to, I believe, 13, maybe. And guys that go over 10 in bareback's pretty rare. I just don't ever see that happening again, 18, and he's a Colorado guy. His family was involved with rodeo, his brothers. So, Bruce was fantastic, and well-deserved to be in the Hall of Fame, and his name will never be forgotten in rodeo.
Yeah, in 1982, he actually became the first cowboy to ever win $100,000 in a single season in one event, which is crazy. We went from that to now, here we are in 2023, this past year, and every single contestant in the top 15 made over $100,000. So it just shows you rodeo's progressing.
Yeah, and when the money's there, guys chase the dream harder, but at least there's a pot at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, for some of these guys.
Yeah, it's time for our Did You Know segment here on the show, and this one is, did you know that the San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo is one of the biggest events that the whole entire community of San Antonio sees an entire year? Second only to the Fiesta. They draw 1.5 million people coming to the rodeo and coming to the San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo.
Yeah, and you've been there. I've been there, and it's a fantastic atmosphere. They play, it's at the home of the Spurs. It's now called Frost Bank Center. It was AT&T, but just a beautiful environment. Like, you go there, and San Antonio's a great culture. We've been able to eat there and hang out there and do things, the Riverwalk, and it's a great place for a rodeo, and they go all out. And they've won, large indoor, the rodeo of the year, 12 times. So they know what they're doing, and they're great at it, and they have the volunteers and everybody that helps them get that job done. Yeah, we had some people here in our office that involved in the San Antonio, where they lived there, went to school there, and they love their San Antonio. So we appreciate them. Over 6,000 volunteers make that rodeo possible. So it's good to know that the sport of rodeo, loved by fans, but also the community of these cities as well. Yeah, and communities like San Antonio are the lifeblood of rodeo. Exactly. San Antonio, Fort Worth, go down the list, Reno, and all these great rodeos, Houston. Historic rodeos. There's just historic rodeos, winter rodeos that progress into the summer, but you can't say enough, and I don't want to go on to diatribe here, but the volunteers that help put on rodeos, whether it's all over the nation, Burwell, Nebraska, or whether it's San Antonio, this stuff doesn't happen without hours and hours of volunteers, and we can't say enough to what those people do. Yeah, a lot of work that other people don't want to do that makes it all possible, so we definitely appreciate them, no doubt about it. It's time for our viewer question here, Tracy, and this one is coming from Tiffany on Facebook. She wants to know, when is the championship for circuit contestants? And so, this is going to be a little bit different than it was in the past. In years past, it was called the Ram National Circuit Finals Rodeo, and now it's here in Colorado Springs, Tracy. Yeah, the NFR Open, so they branded it so it has a little more exposure, and moving it to Colorado Springs made sense because the crowds have been great. Yeah, it's in our backyard, but the crowds are fantastic. The biggest drawback they had when it was in Kissimmee and in Oklahoma City before that, and Guthrie in between there. It wasn't that they weren't wonderful facilities. It just they couldn't draw the crowds.
Yeah, it was tough.
For different reasons. And now Colorado Springs wants it here. We've added performances, and it's July 9th through the 13th in 2024. So there's more rodeos, and you see top guys. I mean, the guys that won the NFR Open, almost all of them went to the NFR for the most part. The winners. I mean, not everybody, but the winners. So you're going to see the best talent around, and it's great for those circuit guys to see that. I mean, we had guys winning $30,000 last year in Colorado Springs.
Holston, yeah.
So, I mean, imagine that. I mean, $30,000, that's a huge chunk of change. So it's changed, it's evolved, and it's given those circuit guys a reason to stay in the circuit, to have that opportunity to go out that kind of money.
Yeah, and generally, you mentioned that $30,000. There's not a lot of rodeos that these guys can go to during the summer months to get that type of money. So we've definitely seen more guys, whether that's the top 15 NFR guys or your, just your weekend rodeo guy around home, taking the circuits stuff a little more seriously because there is so much money to be had. And then if you find a way to win there here in Colorado Springs, you punch your ticket to Puyallup for the beginning of the Cinch playoffs. So it's a big system, and can't wait. It should be a great event again here in Springs, and hopefully Mother Nature keeps the rain away, because last year was like working with swamp people down there for a while.
Last year it was puddles upon puddles, and man, it was just... unfortunately, Carter, the weather changes.
Yeah,
name
especially in the summer.
Name the hour. But, yeah, I think it's a great setting for it, and I think it's only going to get bigger and better. It's a $1 million rodeo in the middle of the summer, so right after Cowboy Christmas. So it's just a fantastic event.
Yeah, no doubt about it. As we talk about 2024, we got exciting news to announce. Buck has signed his contract. He's back for season number 2. I don't know, Tracy. You might have to start feeding the guy a little bit more Carl's Jr. or something like that. But Buck's back. He's ready to rock and roll and keep this train rolling on the Chute Bosses.
Yeah, I know he's got a word for the day, and I preface it looked like Buck might have slept in his car before he walked over and did the word of the day. The shirt's a little unironed. He looks like Buck. Looks like he's not a little worse for the wear, but that's what some of the rodeo trail will do to you if you're Buck.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Pro Rodeo's finest. We'll send it down to Buck. He's got your word of the day.
I'm Buck, insider for the Chute Bosses, the official podcast of the PRCA. My word of the day is Vegas, as in Las Vegas, the home of the NFR since 1985. When it comes to Vegas and Buck, Vegas didn't treat Buck very well, sleeping in cars and couches, and the casinos kept some of my money. I got to get it back when I go there. I'm sure they'll give it back to me because I'm Buck.
Horses are one of nature's greatest gifts, which is why they deserve the very best that nature has to offer.
Since we've started using hemp flavor, our horses are calmer, more willing, more athletic.
In the daily pellet, they eat it in their feed. My horses are picky. For them to eat it says something.
The stuff's really just been lightning in the bottle.
Equine Hemp Solutions. We support your horse so you can support your lifestyle. Proud supporter of your Western Sports Association. Go to the Equine Solutions website below and use Cowboy10 and receive 10% off your order.
Welcome back into the Chute Bosses podcast, the official podcast of Pro Rodeo. Tanner Barth and Tracy Rink here. And Tracy, we teased it out at the top of the show, but we're getting ready to sit down with Anthony Lucia, the 2023 PRCA Announcer of the Year, and can't wait to catch up with him.
Yeah, Anthony's a great guy. I've known him for pretty much the whole time I've been here. Just fantastic sense of humor, just a great announcer, just a great guy to communicate with and know in the business.
Yeah, and he brings his personality, whether he's inside the arena, outside of it. Anthony's now joining us here on the podcast. First of all, Anthony, we just want to thank you for joining us. We know you got a busy schedule going on this winter.
Well, I'm thankful to be a part of the Chute Bosses podcast, and after that introduction, I feel like I'm going to be a little bit of a letdown, but thank you for the kind words.
I don't think that's the case, because the first thing we have to talk to you about, Anthony, is going to be one of the most special achievements, I think, maybe in your life, your pro rodeo career. You were named the 2023 Pro Rodeo Announcer of the Year. Take me through what that was like for you, Anthony, because you got a little emotional on stage.
Yeah, being nominated, I got nominated in 2022 for Announcer of the Year, and just being nominated is special, like to be recognized by your peers. I've had a ton of people ask me since then. They're like, who gets to vote on that? I said, every member of the PRCA. I don't know if they all vote, but they all have the opportunity. If you're a card-carrying member, you get to vote. So the mere fact of being recognized on the list of guys that I that I was on there with, whether it was Wayne Brooks, Bob Tallman, Will Rasmussen, Gary Yergin. Of course, Randy Corley's a legend and an icon and has won like 20 something announcer of the year titles, which is just hard for me to fathom. But if you've been around Randy or you know Randy, then it makes sense because he's just an incredible human being. But, you know, and then you think of all the guys for me, like Boyd Paul Hamus and all of the greats, the Roger Mooneys, and so many incredibly talented people that have been recognized. And it's one of those things where I don't really, I work really hard to try to be good and to not suck that's my goal every day, is to let suck just a little bit less than the next day. Some days I don't do so well, but when you get the opportunity to be recognized on that stage, it's just special, plain and simple. Whether you win or not, it's so special. And then there's so many guys that haven't been on that list that, in my humble opinion, are well worthy of it and deserving of it. So for me to be even nominated is cool. And then watching my dad, you know, for so many years, who was is a pro rodeo Hall of Famer and passed away in 2016, but to see all of his accomplishments throughout his career and work in the NFR, and he won Specialty Actor, Dress Act of the Year 3 different times. And I was flooded with emotion, one, because I didn't think that I had a chance to win it, honestly. When you do what we do, you don't do it for awards. You do what you do what we do as announcers to impact every rodeo in a positive way and tell the stories of the athletes and the animals, and to hopefully engage the fans and give them a happy feeling for 2.5 hours. And so the awards are just a cherry on top, to be honest, and they are so special and it's awesome. But I wouldn't say any of us do what we do to get the buckle or to get the, you know, the recognition like that, because and I can speak for myself, I genuinely love my job. And whether it's a 2-day rodeo in Iowa, or, you know, Pendleton Extreme Bulls, or Oakley, Utah, or Salt Lake City Days of 47, or Ashland, Missouri, I get that same joy and excitement every time before I ride into the arena, or if I'm in an announcer stand and I turn my mic on to say hello to the fans. So, like, this is gonna sound like a, I don't even know, like a fake answer, but like, my award is literally getting to make a living doing this. And the awards are so special, and it just makes you, like, it was so unbelievable when I won it. And a lot of the emotion that everybody saw and all of my friends had given me heck for comes from the emotion that I felt. I watched my dad time and time again get nominated, never won it. And my dad was a bit grumpy at times. And I don't know if that reflected on whether, you know, he wasn't always the nicest guy to everybody, but everybody respected him, and I respected him and loved him. But then when he did win it, I saw, he always said, "Oh, they don't mean nothing. They don't mean nothing." But then when he did win it, I saw the emotion he had on his face and what it meant to him and what those buckles meant to him in his career. And that's a guy who's done everything, worked every major rodeo. His rodeo list, comparatively speaking, makes me feel like I'm doing a really bad job. But when you're a specialty actor and announcer, it's 2 very different businesses. But so that's where the emotion came from. And I don't remember who got the photo, but there was one where I looked up because I was just like, we did it. And I feel like my dad put me on a path, and he taught me how to work hard in whatever I do. And that award was meant more to be able to say I'm carrying on his legacy. And it was almost like an affirmation to the path that I'm on. And sometimes it's, you know, even with what y'all do, there's days where you're like, is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this what I'm supposed to do? And so that award meant a lot to me, and getting to be a part of the rodeos that I get to do, that's the amazingness of my life, but it was sure special.
And Anthony, you talk about how much you enjoy your job. A lot of people, and maybe not so much that are tied into rodeo, but they think announcers just show up and, hey, they get to go to rodeos. But what's your schedule like? I mean, I know you guys have to get selected to announce at rodeos. Talk to us. I mean, you guys almost seem like maybe NBA players to an extent, or Major League Baseball players, as much time as you guys spend on the road.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time on the road, and then a lot of, you know, there's a side of announcing that nobody ever sees, because for 2.5 hours, we're paid to be perfect, or at least our version of perfect, because we are representing that entire rodeo, that committee, that community, all the volunteers who work so hard to put the rodeos on. We're representing the contestants. We're representing the stock contractor, because that's the voice that the fans hear, whether it's on the Cowboy channel or whether it's in-house. And so we put a ton of work in so that in those 2 hours, we're prepared for anything, whether it's the stats on all the athletes or the stories, the stories of what they went through or going through, or this, that, and the other, or the great stories of the incredible bucking horses and bulls and the genealogy that they represent, the legacies that they carry on. And so there's a ton of work that I'm a rodeo weirdo, and I think that's why you guys and me, I think that's why we all get along so much, because we love the sport. We love the people of the sport. And that's I'll spend hours doing research and studying and learning about, if I go to new communities and cities and towns, and learning about what makes that community tick, and whether it's their local high school football team, or if they lost or won in the championship, or just trying to ingrain yourself in the community so that when you do flip the mic on, you're not just some redneck wearing a cowboy hat that likes to hear himself talk. And which I kind of do like to hear myself talk, but that's not the point, guys. But no, there's a lot of work that goes into it. The time spent on the road can be taxing, but also you don't do it unless you love it. And we all signed up for this. Nobody's making us do this. Any athlete on any sport, if they complained about a practice or being away from their families, we chose to do this, and we love doing it. And so that's the drive, is you got to love it. Like, we finished up at Fort Worth, and that was almost 3 weeks, and I was home for 2 days, and now I'm in San Antonio. I'll be here for 18 days, and then I'll be home for a couple days, and then go to the Cinch Timed event at the Lazy, and then home for a couple days, then go to Arlington for the American, and then I get a month off, about a month off, a little less than a month off, not even a month. Dang it. I thought I had a month off. Anyways, but it's like, so I saw a meme the other day, and I know I'm getting long-winded, but that's what I get paid for, so whatever. But I saw a meme the other day. They said sometimes you need to take a step back, because you'll realize you're in the middle of what you prayed for. And it's like the other day when I was just like, got to push through, get through Fort Worth. And Fort Worth is such an awesome rodeo. And then leave home again and drive further south to be in San Antonio. And then it's like, there were days that I literally watched Fort Worth, or would look at the results every night, or if there was clips on Facebook, I would go watch Fort Worth or San Antonio because I love it. And now to get to be a part of these rodeos, oh my goodness, it's a dream come true.
Anthony, you've seen so many great performances in your time, whether you were announcing or, just watching the rodeo. Is there a certain performance from a cowboy that sticks out to you as one you'll never forget? I know that's a little broad when it comes to everything you've seen.
Oh man. Yeah, that is hard to narrow down, but so I'll tell you one that sticks out to me from when I was a kid that helped make me a fan. And it was from Cody, Wyoming, and it was Glenn O'Neill. And I can't remember the name of the horse, but it was an Ike Sankey horse, a big buckskin horse. And it was one of the most incredible rides that I've ever seen. And like, I can still vividly see it in my mind. And then another aspect, or another instance that helped make me a fan, was Billy Etbauer on Rio Bravo at the NFR. And then you think of guys like Cody Olin, Fred Whitfield, and Speed and Rich, and Clay Tryon, and Patrick Smith, and those are the guys that made me want to be a rodeo announcer, because I wanted to tell those stories, and I wanted to be, even though I had nothing to do with their performance, I wanted to be a part of those stories that live on forever, and hopefully make an impact on the people and the fans that are watching the same way that those did on me. But most recently, I would say, obviously, Kai during the NFR is something that none of us will ever forget. Like, that was such a sports amazing moment, just in the entirety of sports. But Stetson last year at the Pendleton Extreme Bulls finals, the performance that he put on, winning 3 of 4 rounds in that arena, sold out crowd in Happy Canyon, part of the Pendleton Roundup, that was just unbelievable. But one of the things that I really enjoy seeing is when those young guys that are now stars And now I'm far enough along in this business where I remember when Cade Saunier was getting on his very first horses, or Jacob Lees was a circuit guy in California. Or you watched guys like Pedro Agarola and JC Flake, who I remember watching at Jackpots, and now to see them have such success in rodeo, like those are the special moments. But again, any guy that's willing to run his hand in a rigging, back in the box, and compete, that's what makes me a fan, because it's so special. And the money that they spend to be able to do, they pay to do this. They literally pay to do this. And it's like, I said this the other day to someone, I said, we get paid to be a part of something that people pay to compete in and pay to watch. That's special. And so when it comes to like a certain ride or a run, watching Ryan Moats and Brock Hansen tie the world record way back when, that was special. And some of the calls that I've got to part when Zeke Thurston went, and I think 92.5 on All or Nothing last year in Salt Lake City, that was just one of those moments where you're like, did that just happen? And so, yeah, it's just special all the way around.
Anthony, I'll bring you back to it. Obviously, you guys are live when you do this stuff, especially now more than ever with Cowboy Channel on the app and on TV. And we get a kick out of sometimes, and I know you don't have control over it, but like you talk to little kids from mutton busting, and you have an elaborate question that you're deep in this deep dive, and the answer is like, yeah. Like, what are those moments like for you?
Those are, honestly, they're priceless, because the authenticity and the pureness and the genuineness of those little kids, where they just rode a sheep, so their heart's pounding. Some of them are drying tears from their eyes, but they realize that they did that. And then when you go to talk to them, it's so funny, some of the answers. And I was actually just filling in for Matt Merritt, the rodeo clown at Fort Worth, because he was under the weather a couple days. And, I was kind of nervous because I'd been announcing and doing interviews with the athletes, but now, okay, it's mutton busting time. And you never really know what they're going to say or how they're going to say it, or if they are even going to talk. So you kind of got to be on your toes. But when that one little boy, when he just goes, yeah, it had no, it wasn't pertaining to my question at all. But it's like those moments, they're so pure that it's just, I don't know, it's so cool. And even like with competitors at Fort Worth, I got to interview a lot of the winners and round winners, and seeing their personalities, or the guys that this is their first time. There's a young man, Gavin Swallow, a steer wrestler from Louisiana, first time to Fort Worth. He wins a round, comes back, wins the semifinals, and you could genuinely see how nervous he was. He was super comfortable jumping off a horse running 30 miles an hour onto the back of a steer and then throwing him down in 3.8 seconds. But by golly, if he's got 90 seconds to do an interview, it's terrifying. And, it's one of those things where I've been on the contestant side of it. I felt the highs and the lows, more lows than highs, hence why I'm a rodeo announcer now and not going to the NFR every year in the team roping. But that's just part of one of the neat things of my job, is getting to really talk to those people, and especially like the little kids in the mutton busting, because you never know. You literally, that old show, Kids Say the Darndest Things. That's the real thing.
Well, one more question for you, Anthony, before we let you go. You mentioned, your rodeo career, then also getting into announcing and media. Take us back to when it first started, Anthony, because a reality TV show, a lot of different things. Take us back to that point that kind of got you into this whole media deal.
Yeah, so I started obviously traveling around with my dad, and he had Whiplash the Cowboy Monkey, and way back when a guy named Steve Gander produced the World's Toughest Rodeos. And when I was probably 13 or 14, because I could trick rope, he would have me do all the interviews, like early morning interviews before the announcer, the clown, was up. He would, Anthony, I'll give you $50 if you show up at 4 a.m. and do these, interviews and talk about, of course, that I was 13 years old, and I'm like, I'm rich. But getting to talk to the media people and talk about the sport of rodeo, that started my, I guess my journey into media. And then being on America's Got Talent really kind of opened my eyes to things that are produced, and the cameras, and just that adrenaline that you feel. And then the reality TV show that I was on, what was that, in 2013, so 11 years ago, that was one of my least favorite things that I did. But at the time, I was kind of coming off of my height of trick roping, and team roping was, there's a lot of dog days when you're team roping, and it paid a lot of money and allowed me to, keep doing stuff and keep entering. And looking back, there's part of me that wants to go, well, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done. But on the same hand, was it? Because everything you do is a part of your journey. And yes, it's taken me a while to where people, they don't go, oh, you're from that show. They go, oh, you're a rodeo announcer. Oh, you know what I mean? And so that's been the neatest thing, the journey. And so now I really get people, because when they go, weren't you on a show? And I go, America's Got Talent? No, that wasn't it. And they go, and I'll go, oh, when I hosted on CBS Sports for some rodeos. No, that wasn't it. And I'll be like, oh, Beat Shazam. I was on there a couple years ago with Jamie Foxx. And they're like, no, it was a reality show with some barrel racers. And I'm like, oh, well, I did 2 seasons of the NBHA World Finals from Perry, Georgia. Was that it? And they're like, no, what? It's not. And I'm like, I know what you're talking about. I'm just trying to make the point that I've done a lot of other things besides be on that dumb reality show. Okay? So let's move on.
Yeah, well, Anthony, we really appreciate you taking the time. I know that Tracy and I appreciate all the work you do in the arena, because, we see and we know what goes into all the hard work of trying to make a rodeo happen.
Yeah, and hopefully we can cross paths with you sooner than later.
I'm sure we will. And a tip of the hat to you guys, because starting this podcast, it is not easy to do a podcast and to get guests and to have good questions to ask and keep everybody engaged. And so thank you all for doing what you do in the PRCA office. And I know this isn't all you guys do, because I've seen the behind the scenes. You guys are 2 of the hardest workers I've ever met. And so thank you guys for keeping the engine running.
Well, we appreciate it, Anthony. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you in San Antonio.
Can't wait. Bye, guys.
There it is, Anthony Lucia. Just a great guy, Tracy, and such a great story of how he got to this point, and he just continues to get better and better every day, like he says.
Yeah, and when you have a media personality like Anthony, it's great to have him as a guest, because he can elaborate on stories that, we know some of the stories, but he can elaborate, and people can come on our podcast and really get an inside look at Anthony Lucia and some of the things they go to, and just what he does as an announcer, and just kind of his back history, how he got to this point.
Yeah, so we can't appreciate him enough. That's going to do it for another episode of the Chute Bosses. We thank you all for joining and watching us. You can catch all the episodes on our YouTube channel or also on your favorite podcast platforms. But until then, keep on rodeoing.